And one of the stories that we talk about at Sacred Art of Living and Dying programs is about a man who's lost in the mists of time and history, probably part legend and part real, maybe even greater than life, by the name of Abbot Fintan. One of those monks who traveled from Ireland to Spain originally, and then seems to have gone to Switzerland, perhaps even to Engelberg, Mount Angel Abbey there, and other places as well, and brought something of this Celtic tradition to those infirmaries. And it was again that wedding and cross-pollination of cultures that brought about something really quite remarkable. There's a great tradition in the west of Ireland. It goes something like Boshona. It means, may you have a happy death. It's an interesting kind of phrase. It sounds so countercultural to our Western ears. It sounds almost like an Irish curse instead of an Irish blessing. May you have a happy death. But it really just acknowledges that death and life are really two sides of the same coin. And in fact, every part of life, if lived in anticipation of a happy death, will be a happier life, will be a fuller life.
The pace of life in a monastery was slow, and the caregivers of that time developed an art of paying attention to those who were in need. They also borrowed wisdom from Celtic traditions that had found their way to the mainland of Europe. From these ancient observations, we catch a glimpse into insights long forgotten.
One of the disadvantages of this period of time is a minor but a big thing, really. They didn't have paper. Now, they did down in Spain because of the influence from the Arab traditions. But in Europe, in the 11th century, they're still scratching on animal skins, which is a very expensive kind of process. You don't own a lot of books because, frankly, most people can't afford them. But on these large vellum parchment animal skin pages, where often they would have the notes of music that were being sung in those infirmary chapels, you would sometimes find in the margin or note side of the page a little jotted comment or reflection. They're called glossae or marginalia. And there you would find sometimes the note of a nurse or a physician in the infirmary, marking what it was that seemed to help someone who was going through a period of transition or suffering. One of the beautiful notes that we ran across was connected to one of the Psalms that talks about breath and breathing. And it seems to be in connection to people who were struggling with breathlessness in their illness. It would be a terrible way to die, to suffocate. Even today, of course, it would raise a lot of fears and anxieties and could complicate managing a person's pain. So imagine taking a simple kind of phrase from the Psalms and a phrase of music. In Latin, memento mei Deus, quia ventus est vita mea. Remember me, O God, for your very breath is my life. And for a patient who was breathless, to hear that my breath is not something I do alone. It's something that's given to me the minute I come into the world, and it's the only thing really that I do without any control till my very last breath at the end of life. That kind of sentiment from the book of Psalms seemed to bring comfort to a patient who was struggling with breathlessness, especially when it was combined with a mode of music that was very repetitive, a kind of mantra chant. The note says, keep repeating this over and over. And somehow being with a person in their breathlessness can help move them and transform that to a kind of smooth, easy breathing, controlling pain and bringing about a more peaceful transition. One of the notes that I discovered that was just an awakening moment. You know, you're plowing through all of these medieval parchments and manuscripts in all of these foreign languages, and frankly sometimes wondering, is there anything here that really has modern relevance or value. But there were these great moments when, in fact, something would come to light. And it was a note, one of those glossae that I noticed on a manuscript in Switzerland. It was in a monastery where the note was written in Latin, and then it was also written in a language that we couldn't decipher, and found out that it was Old Gaelic. And the note seems to go back to the time of Fintan, this person that I mentioned who came from Ireland, because it's written right about that same period of time. And the fact that it's not translated into the language of the day, because in the 11th century everything is written in Latin, says that there's some piece of wisdom here that is utterly non-Western, can't be put into the Western Latin language of the time, and so it's kept in the original language. And the essence of the phrase is, may you have the commitment to know what has hurt you, to allow it to come closer to you, and in the end, to become one with you. It's an instruction to the Anam Cara, the soul friend in the Celtic lands. And now that instruction has been brought into the European monastic infirmaries. And it just sums up that wisdom of leaning into the pain, which is that Celtic instinct, that there's something there when you go through that suffering and not around it. You don't try to avoid it or snuff it out or medicate it. But if you go through that place of emotional hurt, there's always transformation and healing on the other side. And I think that Anam Cara instruction, if it comes from Fintan or not, is saying something not just to the person who is suffering, but I think it's primarily an instruction for the caregiver. It says, you know, if you want to do this work, if you want to really journey with someone, you have to be willing to do it yourself first.